Apollo 13 had to beat studio doubt first. Control hums with calm voices and glowing screens. Then one small failure breaks the rhythm. But underneath that control, the realism had to be fought for. The filmmakers chased authenticity hard enough that it feels like you are trapped inside the capsule with them. The cast studied the real people until the performances stop feeling like roles and start feeling like work under pressure. And somewhere inside all that strain, the film also produced one genuinely likable friendship that lasted long after the shoot was over. These are 10 weird facts about Apollo 13, the movie that makes disaster look routine until routine breaks. Number 1. Everybody knew Apollo 13. That was the problem. By the time the movie started taking shape, the mission was already locked into public memory. People knew the explosion happened, knew the crew got stranded, knew they made it home. So the first studio reaction was brutal in its simplicity. Where is the suspense? There was no villain to hate, no mystery to solve, no final twist to hide in the trailer, just 3 astronauts in trouble, mission control on the ground, and a chain of technical problems getting worse by the hour. The danger was real, but it was built out of systems, calculations, and men trying to think faster than the disaster closing in on them. That is not the kind of pitch studios trust easily. It sounds important. It sounds respectable. It also sounds like the kind of movie audiences might admire more than rush out to see. Ron Howard did not treat Apollo 13 like a history lesson or a prestige NASA drama. He treated it like a survival thriller. The ending was already known, so the tension had to come from the process. One failure triggering the next. Every solution creating a new problem. Oxygen shrinking, power dropping, time getting tighter. The audience was never supposed to ask if the crew survived. They were supposed to feel how hard survival actually was. Number 2. Ron Howard did not cast Apollo 13 like a glossy space movie. He cast it like NASA. That is a huge part of why the film feels right so quickly. Howard was not chasing the flashiest lineup he could build. He wanted actors who looked like they belonged in the capsule in mission control, or in the kind of home where a family has to sit still and wait for terrible news. The movie had to feel true on sight. You can see that instinct all through the cast. Bill Paxton made sense as Fred Hayes because he felt grounded immediately. Not polished, not larger than life, just believable. Then he pushed further, studying the physical misery of the mission so Hayes would not feel heroic in a movie way. He would feel sick, freezing, exhausted, and worn down minute by minute. Kathleen Quinlan brought something harder to Marilyn Lovell than simple worry. Before meeting the real families, she was afraid the role might collapse into the wife at home while the men got all the danger. Then she spent time with Marilyn and understood what the part really was. Not waiting but carrying. Holding a family together while the whole mission turned into a public crisis. That changed the performance. Quinlan stops feeling like someone reacting to the story from the sidelines. She feels like she is absorbing a different kind of pressure and refusing to let it spill. Ed Harris may be the clearest example of Howard's whole approach. He already had the face and posture of someone a room would listen to. But for Gene Kranz, Harris went deeper into the real mission audio and the clipped authority Kranz used under pressure. He did not play him as a speechmaker. He played him like a man who understood that if his voice cracked, the room might crack with it. And Kevin Bacon had one of the hardest jobs in the cast. Jack Swigert was already dead. So Bacon could not build the role face-to-face. He had to work through recordings, stories, and second-hand impressions. What he found was the exact pressure that makes Swigert interesting in the movie, a man who absolutely belongs there professionally, but still feels the strain of stepping into the crew late just as disaster starts unfolding. Howard picked actors who looked right. Then the actors went after the strain underneath the job. Number 3. At first, the easiest move looked obvious. NASA had already filmed the real launch, so why not use it? The more closely the filmmakers studied the archival material, the more the problem showed itself. The footage was powerful in pieces, but it did not lock together cleanly as one dramatic sequence. Different angles had different texture. Different shots had different quality. What felt unforgettable in memory did not play as one continuous launch. So Howard made the harder choice. He did not want to borrow the launch. He wanted to rebuild it. That sounds backward until you understand what the movie was chasing. Apollo 13 was not trying to make the launch look flashier than NASA. It was trying to make it feel whole. The audience needed to believe they were watching one complete event unfold, not a patchwork of famous old images stitched together from different sources. And from there, the work got brutal fast. Because a Saturn V launch does not feel real just because there is a giant rocket on screen. It feels real because of all the physical mess around it. The layers most movies would ignore, the venting gases, the cold, the moisture, the way the rocket filled with super cold liquid oxygen and hydrogen builds frost and ice while it sits on the pad in the Florida heat. Then at liftoff, that ice starts breaking loose and falling away. If the rocket looked too clean, the whole illusion would thin out. So the movie went after those little physical behaviors shot by shot, not to show off, but to restore the ugly mechanical reality that makes real launch footage feel alive. The effects were there to bring back the weight, the texture, and the chaos that the archive could not deliver in one continuous cinematic run. It is not documentary footage. It is a movie rebuilding reality carefully enough that it starts to feel more real than memory. Number 4. Then the movie ran into the next illusion it could not afford to fake: zero gravity. In the mid-1990s, there was no clean shortcut for that. CGI was not strong enough to carry full zero-gravity scenes without the illusion cracking, and wirework could only take them so far. So, Ron Howard went after the problem the hard way. He tried to put the cast into real weightlessness. That meant fighting for access to NASA's KC-135, the plane better known as the Vomit Comet. At first, NASA did not want to hand it over. What changed that was Jim Lovell, who backed the production and helped open the door. After that, the whole strategy changed. Instead of faking the floating on a soundstage, the production built a lightweight version of the command module inside the aircraft and filmed during real parabolic flights. The plane would climb hard, then tip into free fall, giving the cast only about 23 to 25 seconds of actual zero gravity before normal gravity slammed back in. That tiny window was all they had, so every scene had to be broken into pieces. The second the plane hit 0G, Howard would call action and the actors had to float naturally, hit marks, deliver lines, and make it all feel easy before the moment disappeared. Then the plane reset. Gravity came back and they had to do it again, over and over, across 13 days and more than 600 parabolas. And that is where the physical toll really hit. This was not just fun zero-gravity training. The cast had to learn how to move like astronauts instead of flailing like people thrown into a pool. Their bodies were getting yanked from heavy force into weightlessness and back again all day long. The shifts were violent. The nausea was constant. The exhaustion kept stacking. NASA gave them anti-nausea medication just to keep the shoot going. But even that came with its own weird side effects, leaving them groggy, wired, or both. Kevin Bacon later described the whole thing as miserable and terrifying. The movie did not fake space from the ground. It went up there and paid for it with bodies. Number 5. By the time Apollo 13 had the capsule, the launch, and the zero gravity, Ron Howard still wanted one more thing. He wanted the movie to stop feeling recreated and start feeling inhabited. So instead of sealing the film off from the real event, he kept letting the real mission slip back into it. The best moment comes at the end. The crew is rescued. They step onto the deck of the USS Iwo Jima. A Navy captain walks forward and shakes Jim Lovell's hand. That captain is not an actor. It is the real Jim Lovell. Howard did not bury that choice under makeup or trick staging. He let the moment play clean. Tom Hanks as Lovell, the real Lovell standing there in uniform, greeting the movie version of his own survival. For a second, the film stops feeling like a reenactment and starts feeling like history walking into frame to approve what it is seeing. Then Howard pushed the same idea into Mission Control. He did not want a room full of actors pretending to know how NASA worked. So he brought in real flight controllers, real engineers, and people who already knew how to sit at those consoles without faking it. They knew how to read the screens, move through the room, handle the switches, and carry that clipped professional rhythm naturally. In places, the room is full of people who already belong there. So Apollo 13 did not settle for building the mission from scratch. It kept inviting the real one back in. Number 6. Everybody knows the line. Houston, we have a problem. It feels so locked into history that most people assume that is exactly what was said. It wasn't. In the real Apollo 13 emergency, the first astronaut to report the explosion was Jack Swigert, not Jim Lovell, and the wording was slightly different too. What came through the radio was, "Houston, we've had a problem." Then Lovell repeated it moments later in a similar form. The movie changes both parts. It gives the line to Tom Hanks as Lovell, and it changes the wording into the present tense. "Houston, we have a problem." "We've had a problem" feels like a report. Something has happened. "We have a problem" feels like the crisis is alive right now. Still spreading. Still unfolding while you listen to it. The line gets cleaner, sharper, more immediate. Giving it to Lovell changes the weight too. By that point, the movie has already built him as the center of the story. So handing him the line locks the moment to the person the audience is writing with most closely. The real mission said it one way. The film shapes it into the version that lands hardest in a theater. That is how the movie made the line immortal. Not by inventing it, but by tightening it just enough that pop culture never let it go. But the line was only the beginning. The film changed the tension between the men too. Number 7. On screen, the pressure spills outward fast. People snap, voices rise, the astronauts sound irritated with each other. Mission Control feels one bad update away from boiling over. The real mission did not move that way. Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Swigert were freezing, exhausted, sleep-deprived, and running out of options, but they were not turning on each other. They did not have time for that. The movie leans into the idea that Swigert's late arrival created friction inside the crew, even brushing up against blame once things start going wrong. In real life, that is not how it played. If NASA had thought Swigert could not handle the job, he never would have been in the spacecraft. The same thing happens on the ground. In the film, Gene Kranz and the flight controllers sometimes feel one bad sentence away from exploding. It works for drama, but the real exchanges were much steadier than that. Kranz was not losing control of his team. He was holding it together. That is what becomes so striking once you hear the actual mission audio. The emergency comes in. The astronauts report what they see. Houston answers. The spacecraft is in serious trouble, but the voices stay clipped, controlled, almost unnervingly calm. No shouting, no collapse, no movie-style release of pressure, just trained people talking through catastrophe like panic would only make the math worse. The film adds conflict so the audience can feel the strain faster. The actual crew did something harder. They stayed that calm while everything was breaking. Okay, right now, Houston, the voltage is, looking good. We had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning. Now, if we need to get home, let's solve the problem, but let's not make it any worse by guessing. Number 8. After all that rebuilding, Apollo 13 finally reached theaters in the summer of 1995, and it did not arrive like a niche history drama. It opened at number 1 with about $25.4 million, which immediately killed the idea that this was only going to play as a respectful retelling for older audiences. The movie hit fast, and it hit wide. Against a budget in the mid-$50 million range, Apollo 13 finished with around $355.8 million worldwide, making it one of the biggest hits of 1995. That is not the box office shape of a movie people merely admire. That is the shape of a film that connected far beyond NASA buffs, history fans, or prestige drama crowds. Roger Ebert called it one of the year's best films. Audiences gave it an A cinema score, which is the kind of grade that tells you people were not just respecting the craftsmanship. They were locked into it. The movie was doing exactly what Ron Howard needed it to do, taking a story with a known ending and making the process feel tense enough that the familiarity did not matter. The audience already knew the astronauts lived. The movie still made survival feel like it was happening in real time. Number 9. For most actors, a movie like Apollo 13 ends when filming ends. This one didn't. It stayed with Tom Hanks and Gary Sinise long after the cameras stopped rolling. Apollo 13 did not just hand them NASA roles for a few months. It pulled both men deeper into the world behind those roles, and both kept finding their way back to it. You can see it most clearly with Tom Hanks. The fascination was already there. He was 13 when the moon landing happened, and it hit him so hard, he later admitted he once wanted to be an astronaut himself. He even joked that the dream died because he was not good at math. Then Apollo 13 gave that old obsession a new place to live. A few years later, Hanks produced and hosted From the Earth to the Moon for HBO, then kept circling back through documentaries, narrations, museum support, and public enthusiasm for NASA. Gary Sinise moved in the same direction, just more quietly. After Apollo 13, he kept circling back through aviation and space subjects in narration and documentary work. He narrated When We Left Earth, the NASA missions, calling it Living American History, and later became the Capcom voice for Mission Space at Epcot. And there is one subtle little echo from the last time Hanks and Sinise shared a movie. Just 1 year before Apollo 13, Sinise had played Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump and told Hanks's character, "If you're ever a shrimp boat captain, that's the day I'm an astronaut." Then 1 year later, there they were in Apollo 13, both pulled into NASA history. Like the line had somehow come true sideways. Apollo 13 ended. The space part didn't. Number 10. Apollo 13 did more than make history on screen. It forged a deep friendship between Jim Lovell and Tom Hanks. And Hanks wanted more than a faithful performance. He wanted access to the real Lovell, his thoughts, his instincts, and the quiet strength behind every decision. So Lovell invited him to spend a few days with him in Horseshoe Bay, Texas. And what followed was not some quick research stop where an actor asks a few respectful questions, takes notes, and flies home feeling prepared. Lovell opened the door wider than that. He brought Hanks into his world. Then he took him flying. Because Lovell did not treat Hanks like a celebrity visitor. He treated him like someone worth teaching properly. He flew him in daylight. Then he took him up again at night. Not for fun, but to show him what space really does to your sense of distance, direction, and scale when the world drops away and most of what surrounds you is darkness. And then Lovell pushed it even further. He mocked up part of the lunar module window and used the night sky to show Hanks how little an astronaut actually sees on the way to the moon. No giant movie view, no glowing fantasy, just blackness, isolation, a few hard points of reference. Lovell was not just helping Hanks sound right. He was handing him the sensation of it. The silence, the distance, the strange emptiness between where you are and where you are trying to go. And that bond did not disappear when filming ended. It lasted after Apollo 13. The two men remained close for decades. And that is why the ending of this story hits harder than a normal actor-subject friendship. When Jim Lovell died on August 7, 2025 at 97, Hanks did not write like a man remembering an old role. He wrote like a man saying goodbye to a real friend. He honored Lovell as someone who dared, dreamed, and led others to places they would never have gone alone. By then, Lovell was no longer just the astronaut Hanks had once played. He was the man who had sat beside him in a small airplane and tried to show him what the road to the moon really looked like after the light disappeared. So Apollo 13 did not just give Tom Hanks a historical figure to study. It gave him Jim Lovell. Apollo 13 works because it never chases grandeur. It trusts something stronger. Professionals under unbearable pressure solving the next problem before the last one stops burning. That steady competence carries the whole movie. So tell us what you thought about these facts, and if we missed anything, drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll keep digging into classics like this.